Good evening. My name is Brett Provenzano. I am the superintendent of Fairport Central School District, and welcome to the Under the Hood of the Fairport Central School District budget, investing in our future Red Raiders. And this is our second or third year of doing Under the Hood, and we're excited to be talking about the intricacies and details of our budget. Again, my name is Brett Provenzano. This is my 11th year serving as superintendent, and I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity to really talk about the budget in different ways, or the budget process, and how it compares to surrounding area districts, and what it takes to build a budget from an expenditure and revenue perspective. To my right, I have
I am Jeremy Nardone. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations here at Fairport.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Wilson. I am the Deputy Superintendent for School Improvement and Community Engagement here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Lauf. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources.
I would like to thank our Board of Education, who has high expectations for being transparent and making sure that we're doing all we can to inform our community on all facets of our budget. Every year we set budget goals, and one of the main components of our goals is to keep long-term fiscal sustainability at the forefront of the budget process, with a focus on being transparent and fiscally responsible. Under the Hood is our attempt to do that. This evening, we're going to be talking about the school budget process. When we talk about getting under the hood, we're talking about how we build a budget, who are our students that we serve, important budget factors, where exactly our money goes, and actually what's next in our budget process. This is not an actual presentation of the 26-27 school year budget. This is a roadmap for how we arrive at the annual budget. You'll see that the budget isn't just a one-time event. It's a process that lasts throughout the year, and there are many factors that influence the budget. Full budget presentations, however, can be seen at fairport.org or on our YouTube channel. We'll be communicating the budget for 26-27 throughout the next several months, as we will talk about. Start out by how we build a budget.
All right. So as Mr. Provenzano said, budgeting is a process. Budgeting does not happen over the course of 1 month, 2 months, or even 6 months. Budgeting is actually a full year, right? So we look at our fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th, and we really start the budget process in about September, when we really start building out salaries. A lot of our contracts are known, and they're not expired year to year, so we'll know who the teachers are and what their raises will be for next year. So when we look at budgeting, there's really a few different types of budgeting. And if we go to the next slide, there's 3 different types of budgeting, and we use a combination of all 3. So the first one is a rollover, where you look at what was our budget last year, and then just allocate maybe a 3 to 4% increase to cover your salaries, to cover your benefits, and to cover the costs of inflation. Everybody knows, just like your home budget, our budget costs do go up year to year, whether it's taking care of something in facilities, transportation, or just some contract expense that's going to go up. Another way to budget is a per pupil allocation. That's when you look at the students that are enrolled in each grade and really allocate the budget based on that. That is helpful when building school district budgets for principals, but it is not helpful for salary budgets. And then lastly, a zero-based budget. This is when you start from scratch, you don't look at last year's budget, and you start budgeting from square one. This is very helpful, and again, we use all 3 because it really shows where your expenses are located, so you know what you're going to spend year over year.
I would have to say one of the first things that we do every budget season, which again begins right after the May vote, we start prioritizing our needs as a district, and by the fall, early fall, we have budget goals. This year, our budget goals are related to school improvement, particularly aligning resources to maximize student learning. It's just what our community expects. We're doing so much MTSS work, continue to build on that. Providing equitable access to student-centered and whole child programming. One of the hallmark traits of our district is giving students wonderful opportunities in the classroom, extracurricular, electives, all sorts of opportunities so they can express themselves. And most recently, the past few years, it's strengthening our district's universal pre-K programming. We also continually talk about investing in and planning for modern, environmentally sustainable, safe facilities. And like I said, as we started the presentation, the third budget goal is to keep long-term fiscal sustainability at the forefront, continually giving our community opportunity to interact with the budget. Those are our budget goals, and it helps us stay focused as we build the budget. Who are our students? We serve many students, and Dr. Wilson is going to be talking a little bit about who our students are.
All right, so we have approximately on any given day in Fairport this school year about 5,300 students. Additionally, we have 108 UPK students. What you see in this pie graph here is the breakdown of where those students go to school. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Jefferson Avenue is a K-5 building. Brooks Hill, also a K-5 building. I'm going to skip to Dudley, which is one of our K-2 buildings, and then Northside, which is blended, is a 3-5 building. And then we also have two middle schools, Johanna Perrin and Martha Brown. You'll see that right around all of those buildings have about the same population. Minerva DeLand is our 9th grade building, which this is the last year, in case you missed that, of our Minerva DeLand school for 9th grade. Those students will be joining the FHS, the Fairport High School students, next year, which is where the largest amount of our students go attend school. So that's our population this year and a breakdown of those. And if we switch to the next slide, you can see that we've been tracking our enrollment over time. We do a enrollment projection study every so often, every couple years, to make sure we're keeping an eye on all of the changes that are happening in our region and in our area, looking at things like real estate and housing developments and move-ins and outs, how many children are born each year. We contract out with a group on making sure that we can have the most accurate predictions of our enrollment. We are in the 2025, you'll see that highlighted with an arrow, where we projected about 5,093 students. And you can see that we've had a declining enrollment. It starts to level off a little bit. And again, the numbers after 2025 are projections.
So I would say over the past several years, I've been in the district 21 years, and we were projecting this. This is not new information. When I came in around 2005, we knew that this day was going to be here. We were losing students, enrollment decline, probably about 1 to 3% a year, and we're at a point where we're seeing it start to level off. And simply, people are just not moving out of their homes. And when they do move out of their homes, we know that homes go quickly, but back in the 90s and 80s, they were building houses with, 5 bedrooms, and kids and families are having 1 to 2, sometimes 3, an occasional more than 3. But the amount of families have when they do come in, they're not having the same number of families just by the very nature of.
Yeah, Fairport can be described as an age-in-place community. So as people retire, they are staying here. And so that accounts for much of that decrease in enrollment that we are seeing over time.
And who could blame them?
It's a wonderful place to live and work. Looking at our mobility trends, so we talked about what we thought the enrollment was going to be. So the projection was 5,093. And we had an anomaly this year. We had many students move into the Fairport community, and that happens every year. We have kids move in and out, but we saw quite a number move in. So since the start of the school year, we've had 128 students move into Fairport schools and only 52 transfer out. So that's a net of 76 students that we didn't necessarily account for from the start. We are able to handle and manage all of those students, but that is quite a difference from what we've seen in previous years. Last year, we had a net in the entire year of 47, and right now we're at 76. And then the year prior to that, we actually had a negative 12, so that means more students moved out than moved in. And so that's just something we're watching very closely. Again, that has to do with availability of housing and transiency rates and things like that. So just something that we're always keeping an eye on as we're building our programming. Another factor that we always are watching with our enrollment is our needs. So when we look at our needs, we're looking at economic status. So that's students that would qualify for free and reduced lunch or other types of government assistance, students with disabilities, and then students that receive English as a second language supports. And so you can see that those represented by the blue, red, and green lines have fluctuated a little bit over time with a kind of a steady increase in students with disabilities. So we're always watching those numbers as well, and those factors have a lot to do with how we staff our buildings and then the budget overall. And then specifically, let's look at our free and reduced lunch. So our students that would qualify for economic need. You can see that represented by the blue line in this graph. So that, again, this is a call out specifically of that. And you can see that number, that percentage has varied rather significantly over time, but it has been in the last 3 years been a steady increase.
So again, having fortunate perspective of being in this district for a number of years, those numbers were under 10% when I first started here 20 years ago as a middle school principal, and through the years, those numbers have increased. Now, why is that important? Because not only do they receive free and reduced lunch or being targeted as in financial distress or need, but with that, there's a range of services that we are obligated and happily provide our students and families as income disparities have grown through the years.
And if you were just to take a look back to 2016, just in case it's blurry for you, that's about 18.5%. And this current school year, we're at almost 25% of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. That's a significant difference over time. As our population has declined, our free and reduced lunch has gone up. So as we've shared some of those enrollment trends, and for those of you at home, you will have a chance to reply with any questions or thoughts that you have. It'll be a link in our YouTube account if you're watching on YouTube. But just some questions for you to think about as you're watching throughout this is, what are some of the trends you're seeing? Are you surprised by anything? And are there any implications you think that we should be keeping an eye on for these trends?
Okay, let's get into some of the different budget factors that Fairport has. First of all, we're going to talk about the difference between a mandated service and some of the different mandated services that we offer.
Superintendent Provenzano alluded to a couple things as far as supports for students. So students may qualify for English language services, and those are mandated services, but not always fully funded by the state. I'm just going to call out a few of these. Additionally, special education services, again, decided by CSE, that's the Committee on Special Education, or the Committee on Preschool Education, that's CPSE. As those services are decided, we do get reimbursed by the state, but again, not always at the full rate at the cost of those programs. We are required by state law to provide academic intervention services, and when you hear us talk at board meetings, those are referred to as our MTSS services, our intervention services. Again, required to give those services, but not fully funded in those services. Lots of other things fall under that same category, including all of the reports we have to do to this for the state, and we are required to do those, but not funded to get those reports up and running. One of the biggest pushes from the state recently has been in the science of reading, and Fairport has done an absolutely wonderful job, and we're seeing the return on our investment for the science of reading, and that is not something that is fully funded by the state. I'll give it over to Jeremy for some of the mandated things that aren't fully funded by the state.
Yeah, looking at some stuff that's non-instructional. We have transportation requirements. So we have to transport students to non-public, private, and parochial schools that are outside of our confines. In addition, we also have to transport students that are deemed homeless. So what that means is if you have a student who was living here in Fairport in our confines of our district, and they are deemed homeless, and they go live with a relative that's in Webster or in Greece, we still have to transport that student per law. In addition, some of the other unfunded mandates are temperature controls in classrooms. And that kind of goes hand in hand with our building and HVAC systems. So with that, we have to make sure that our classrooms are under a certain temperature, or else we got to provide mitigating factors and strategies to beat that. That's something that is not coming through with no aid and no funding from the state. In addition, one of the biggest ones is minimum wage. Minimum wage has been increasing in New York State rapidly over the past 5 years. So that is something that we have to keep up with per law. You cannot pay people under minimum wage. What that also does, though, and what people need to realize, is that also hurts the people that are making above minimum wage, but just slightly. So if you have people creeping up and getting closer, you have what's called that regression and kind of that you're paying people too close together. So that's something that we look at through negotiations, because you might have somebody with 10 years experience now making somebody making similar to somebody who has 2 years experience. And the last one that we've always talked about for the past, I want to say 5 years, feels like, is the zero emission buses. So with this, the bus cost is going to go up. The state aid is actually now over more than 5 years. It's relatively 8 years, and good luck getting a bus to last 8 years. So it's something that you're going to be paying on and receiving aid well after it's actually usable. So just other things we got to worry about.
And not only do we have mandates from New York State, but we also have things in Fairport that people have grown to love and appreciate and expect from our schools. And so just to name a few of those that are factors in our budget are things like our district-wide health program that we offer K through 12. For many of our students, they take advantage of our extracurricular and co-curricular activities, including sports, clubs, musicals, and all of our ensembles and choir opportunities for students. We also have extensive mental health supports throughout our schools, which we're very, very proud of, but also come at a cost. We have taken on sustainability initiatives, including composting at the elementary schools. Again, something wonderful to do, not only for Fairport, but for the environment as a whole. And it is something that is factored into our budget. We also have an extra special for elementary students called Spark Labs, and we've talked about that frequently at our board meetings, but that is an opportunity for our youngest learners to be exposed to technology and some up and coming programming and things like that for future careers in technology, and then also just foundations for learning. Again, something wonderful in Fairport, but it comes at a cost. Our UPK program, I talked about our 108 students. Right now, the state has not fully funded UPK programs, and we are hoping that through this next budget cycle, we will see that fully funded, but we have been covering some of the UPK supports and program costs through our general budget, and so you'll see that in our overall budgeting. And then we do so much professional development to make sure that our staff is on the edge of what is best practice for teaching and learning, and so that comes at a cost as well. Jeremy, do you want to add some?
Absolutely. There's also facilities and grounds maintenance. So something that we have 8 school buildings as of now and 4 other district buildings. So a total of 12 buildings that need care. They need plow services, they need resealing, they need maintenance, they need work. So that's something that we also support in our budgets. And another thing that's really important, students are not going to learn if they don't feel safe and they don't feel secure in the schools. So we do spend money and allocate money in the budget to make sure that our students and our staff feel safe.
One thing that strikes me throughout the year at many different moments is we have a real live organization here. It's like a mini city, and we forget about the business aspects of what it takes to operationalize all the wonderful things that Dr. Wilson and Jeremy were just talking about. And those dollars are necessary to provide the programming that people expect. People meaning our community, people meaning our students, people meaning our staff. There's become high expectations. We didn't talk about the community celebrations that we continually have, from homecoming, the homecoming pep rally, Brotherhood Sisterhood Week, all the celebrations, Wall of Distinctions, Hall of Fames. All those are community expectations that we proudly support and serve. We do have opportunities to celebrate our students. This is our brag sheet. Our students and our staff continually make us proud and thrive in so many different ways. And you see that up here on this slide about the students who have the New York State Seal of Biliteracy in 7 different languages. Those are students that have multiple proficiency in world languages. That's 62 students. 96 students studied civic readiness, and they received the seal of civic readiness. 71 students graduated with academic honors. So our students participate in advanced placement courses. There's over 110 electives and 11 different courses that students get to choose from. Again, community expectations, and our students flourish in it. When we interact with students throughout their time here, and particularly as they leave, they talk about the hallmark experiences of electives and rite of passages like special trips and the leadership trip, and the list goes on and on. We also have schools that are recognized for excellence. FHS was named to the College Board AP School Honor Roll in 24 and in 25. JP and Martha Brown for over 10 years have been recognized as schools to watch for middle schools. That's given to less than 3% of the nation's middle schools. We are fortunate to have 2 of them here in our school district because the middle schools are guided by research-based best practices that school community members, students, and staff have come accustomed to. FHS is a national school blue ribbon school and is ranked annually as a high-performing school by U.S. News and World Report. That's based upon how many kids are taking AP exams, and they do so well in those areas, and we're proud of all the things that they do and give our community so much pride.
So there are a number of factors that the district looks at when we project expenditures and staffing. Specifically, when we're determining the staffing and the related costs, we have to look at the overall student enrollment and the needs of the student population, which could be general education, special education, or a variety of other supports. We take into consideration program offerings, again, the class sizes, the number of electives and the offerings we have, the different supports that are needed for our students to be successful, co-curricular activities such as clubs, music, and art, a robust athletic program, and then there's a number of contractual obligations that we take into consideration, again, speaking to class sizes and supports and items like that. Those are all looked at when we are determining our staffing and related costs there.
And staffing is everything. We are a people business. Staffing and benefits make up over 70% of our budget. So along with that staffing comes benefits, right? There's health insurance costs, there's dental, there's workers' compensation, unemployment. There's also Social Security. We have to pay 7.65% of all salaries. In addition, we also have pensions. We have the ERS, which is the employer retirement system, and we also have TRS, which is the teacher's retirement system for the certified staff. We do have to pay into those retirement systems for that. In addition, there's the non-instructional support such as utilities, operations, maintenance, security, and technology. So that is all stuff that goes into the budget as well. We have network security and supports. We have administrative costs that we use and administrative softwares that we use, such as to run the business office, run the HR office. In addition, we have debt. On all capital projects, we do borrow money, and then we pay that money back over roughly 15 years, and then we do get building aid back at about 73 to 75%. Right now, we're hovering at about 73.4% over those 15 years. And then finally, there's transportation costs to get students to and from school. Transportation is aidable at about, it's anywhere from 68 to 72%. Right now, you can see it's at about 69.8%. It varies year over year based on many different factors, including the non-allowable pupil decimal, which takes into consideration how many kids we drive that's within a 1.5 mile radius. And then with that, we also have our bus purchase replacement plan, which we try to cycle our buses every 10 years. And then to do that, because we have such a large fleet, we do have to buy anywhere between 7 and 9 buses every year to do that.
And I also think, again, going back to this slide really speaks to the depth of our organization, the amount of services, the amount of maintenance and upkeep and planning required to make sure that we're able to provide the very best for our students and safe and welcoming learning environments.
As Mr. Nardone and Superintendent Provenzano mentioned previously, we are a people organization. So as you can imagine, salaries and benefits are a large part of the district's budget. We have 6 collective bargaining units, and they're shown up here on the slide. About 1,157 total employees currently. The largest of the employees, is the Fairport Educators Association, about 559 teachers. No surprise there. But we also have the Fairport District Paraprofessionals, our Transportation Association, our School Support Personnel, our wonderful Office Personnel Association, and our Fairport Administrators. And then outside of the 6 collective bargaining units, we have close to 200 non-collective members of our staff. And on the furthest column, you can see the collective bargaining agreements and when they expire. As we come up on the spring of those dates, we enter into successor negotiations with the different collective bargaining units to move forward with new agreements so that we have stability within all of our bargaining units.
So it's frequently stated when we look at budget that keep things out of the classroom, right? And I want you to look at that list and you tell me which one of those are not part of a student's experience, right? Obviously, our Fairport educators are on the ground floor every single day, but our critically essential staff, whether you're a paraprofessional, working in the transportation center, supporting our students in the offices and our families in the offices who directly impact the operations of the district. So many amazing things going on in our school district. Administrators planning, organizing, leading initiatives. There's no such thing as keeping cuts away from the classroom because every one of these factors influence teaching, learning, and our environment. Our programming depends on all of these professionals, and we're proud to serve and work alongside of them because they do an exemplar job, and in many cases, shorthanded.
All right, so as we've stated, this is like running a small city. And so are there any budget items that you did not expect that we talked about? Also, what are your thoughts and wonders about what's included in the budget? And is there anything that you wish that we were funding more robustly than we already are? So just take a few moments to think about that. And again, you'll be able to put your comments in. There will be a link to share in the YouTube video.
Thank you for reiterating that point. We will have a QR code at the end of this presentation where individuals will be able to get to my page where you could share some of your thoughts and reflections, and of course we'll respond to them. Moving right along, we're going to focus on where does the money go, and I think this is an important part because, again, just reiterating the themes of all the operational and instructional components of our district. Mr. Nardone is going to walk us through where the money goes.
Absolutely. All right, one of our favorite slides here, cut the dollar in many different sections. So as I stated before, as Mr. Laufus said, we're a people business. Salaries and benefits make up over 70% of the budget. It's around 71 cents on the dollar. Next is our BOCES services. So when I say BOCES, we are a part of Monroe One BOCES. We are part of that consortium and that group of East Side districts that belong to Monroe One. The West Side districts belong to Monroe Two BOCES. And we're able to buy services that are joint through the BOCES, and it actually generates BOCES aid on most of the purchases, not all. One of the biggest expenses we have in our BOCES is our special education placements. So think of BOCES as a place that many districts, as I stated, those East Side districts, can all send kids to. So BOCES is really equipped to handle those kids and to have the space available and the rooms and the supports needed to take care of those kids and run the programs more efficiently than we can in our buildings due to space issues and due to all those different issues because we're not teaming up with other districts. BOCES does that, and we can send a lot of students there. In addition to BOCES services, we also have administrative costs that could run through BOCES and also some security costs and maintenance costs that can run through BOCES that generates aid back in the next year. So how the aid works, whatever we spend in 25-26 will get aided back in 26-27. So think about it. We're putting together the 26-27 budget, but it's based on 25-26 expenses, which we're not going to know 100% because there could be some unforeseen things that come through. So that is really the art of budgeting, and it's not really a science. There's also some contractual costs, contractual services. There's tuition, fees, insurance costs. That makes up roughly 6 cents on the dollar of our budget. In addition, we also have debt service costs and our capital outlay. That's strictly relating to the different capital projects that we do. But with that cost also comes associated building aid. So it's not a one-for-one trade. And a lot of times I'll get questions on, well, if you can't afford it, don't do the project. Well, the project really doesn't have any bearing on the local cost of the budget because that's already factored in. What we try to do and what we say when we do projects is it's no additional tax impact to the community. What that means is it's not raising your taxes to do that project. So if we cut it out, it's not really saving any money in the budget because you're also going to lose the building aid associated with it. Every budget has materials, supplies, textbooks. That's very important. It's what we do, but it's so small in total that it only makes up about 1 cent of our budget. In addition, there's equipment that's excluding the buses. There's equipment which is the buses. There's some utility costs which are always rising, right? We are part of Fairport Electric here, so we do get good rates. But with that said, we have 12 buildings, 8 school buildings. They're constantly being used. You come by here at 8 o'clock at night, we have tons of events going on. It's great for the community, but that also comes with a cost, and we're glad to have that cost. There's fuel costs. Again, that's less than 1 cent. We do get some aid back on it because it is a transportation cost. And then there's interfund transfers. So when interfund transfers are said, it's just a way of saying there's expenses that are recorded to different funds. So when it says interfund transfers special aid, we do have some costs that run through the special aid fund, but there is a local share. It's roughly 20% that's billed back to the general fund, and that's what covers that cost, and that's less than 1 cent in addition.
So one thing that we need to continually talk about, I'm really focused on the consolidation of Minerva Deland and Fairport High School. For many years, this has been a point of conversation. This will occur in 26, 27, starting in the fall. And the Board of Education had very specific purposes around the consolidation, and that's improving access to academic programming for all of our students, including the electives and alternative education programming, building on the great connections that our students and staff continually make, making sure that academic and social and emotional needs of our students are always met. We're excited about the prospects of having a 9th grade teacher be with a student and see them continually throughout their years in Fairport High School. I think that's going to be a great plus for many of our students as our staff connects with our students in so many different ways. Fully utilize the updated high school facility. You can see there's multiple different renovation points here at Fairport High School that we're excited to share with the 9th, 12th grade population, and maximize the use of our properties here in the district to include repurposing Minerva Deland and the future sale or lease of Balmer Place. As we move along, we'll be analyzing district office properties as well, but right off the bat, Balmer Place will be the next property that we are going to analyze. What does this mean for the budget and for future budgets? Analyzing potential revenue sources and educational opportunities in the Minerva Deland facilities. That facility will always be used. Just got a quick text message. That facility is jam-packed right now with a concert, and we're going to continue to use that facility because I'm sure there'll be multiple concerts going on, so we need to care and upkeep for Minerva Deland's facility because there'll be opportunities to use it. But we'll also be seeking, as we go through the budget process, you'll see a partnership with BOCES that will generate some natural revenues, which is for the benefit of the district as a whole. I examine the operating costs of the Minerva Deland facility. We're always going to be trying to maximize that and see where we can, consolidate or repurpose our district facilities and use it in multiple different ways so it can be a savings to the district and maximize Fairport Central School District as a whole, the existing facilities and programming. What that means is constantly analyzing and, are we going to be able to, we're considering a makerspace at Minerva Deland for our robotics team, trying to give them more space, more comfortable space that will meet their needs, possible community education programming as well. So we continue to use Minerva Deland, and how it will impact future budgets in the future will be part of our Fairport story going forward.
So moving forward a little bit, let's get into the numbers here. So as you can see on the screen, and it is small, so bear with me. I do apologize about that, but it's the best way to get it on the page. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, myself, or Mr. Provenzano here. But this talks about all the different non-instructional spendings that we have. So non-instructional is simply what it means. It's everything in our budget except for the instructional piece. So in schools, we use accounting that's called function codes, and they're a 4-digit code. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all the 4-digit codes for different functions that are included in this analysis. So you can see a big increase, and you can see increases over the last 10 to 15 years in this report, but you'll see a big increase in year 2024. The reason we don't have 2025 in there yet is because it just happened. It was just over, so we haven't finished compiling that information. But if you look at 2024, the bar is a lot higher. And there might be a reason as to why that is. And one of the main reasons is you can see towards the bottom, there's a dark gray bar. That gray bar is a transfer to the capital fund. And what that is for is, if you remember, in October of 2023, the community voted on the two capital projects, the one for the track and the one for the high school addition / the renovations at Martha Brown. When that happens, we have until the end of that fiscal year. So our fiscal year runs July to June. So if you voted in October of 23, by June of 24, which is when this graph was created, you have to transfer the money over to the capital fund from your reserve. Because remember, we did ask the community to use some of those reserve dollars because we wanted to not increase the taxes for that project. So that is why you'll see a bigger increase in 2024 was for that reason. In addition, one of the biggest bars you'll see here is the gray bar, which is your employee benefits. It goes back to people. We are a people business. Benefits is something. We are a part of a consortium called RASP, the Rochester Area School Health Plan. That cost is going up year over year, just like you're seeing at your homes, right? Health insurance costs go up all over. It is something that we're managing. We are a self-funded plan, which is good. But as people are going to the doctors more and more, those costs are going up. So it's something that business officials, superintendents around the county are looking at to try to decrease, but it's one of those things that it's very tough to do it. In addition, you'll see like a purple bar towards the top, a light purple. That is your facilities, your buildings and grounds, and also your technology services. So that's another big chunk of the budget because we have to make sure those 8 school buildings, 12 buildings are functionable so that our staff can come to work, our students can come to work, they're warm, they're cool, right? In the wintertime, we have contractual obligations for our 12-month staff that we need to uphold. So that is pretty much the budget in a nutshell. It really comes down to employee benefits on the non-instructional side, your facilities, your technology, your admin technology costs, not your instructional, and also your transfer to debt.
I think it's important to recognize, the instructional technology component through the years that has grown, and that's the world around us. And with that come recurring costs in addition to those other very important operating costs. So we can have, the employee benefits. Again, it consumes most of our budgeting as we are a people organization, as we're saying. But this slide right here really tells the story on where the dollars are being spent, and it makes sense from an operational standpoint. And when you think about schools, we rarely think about this slide, right?
Absolutely.
And when it comes to employee benefits, making sure that we make this an attractive, welcoming place for all of our staff members, doing it in a way that's responsible and responsive to our community as well. So trying to balance that always, but these are incredibly important factors from transporting our students. We have high expectations that we have safe,
Absolutely,
transportation and mechanics and all the right things that support their incredible work there. So again, I really appreciate how you did this slide a little bit differently. It does tell a story.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then getting into the nitty gritty a little bit more with this. So let's talk about benefits as a whole. So this is not just benefits that is for instructional, this is benefits for non-instructional in total. So you can see the biggest bar is that yellowish, the light green, lime green. It's the worst color on the page. I'm sorry about that. I did not pick the colors when we did this. It was just in our system. But that is your health insurance. That is the biggest cost that we see. In addition, as I stated before, there are state retirement and teacher retirement. That's your dark brown and your lighter or your darker like peach color there that we do have to subscribe to and we do have to pay into. In addition, you have Social Security, which is really FICA. It's not only your Social Security, but it's also your Medicare. That is your pink bar. And then there's some other costs as well, such as life insurance, unemployment, disability. They're very hard to see because they're so small compared to the whole. The biggest cost here, and the reason that we wanted to show this slide, again, for transparency purposes, you'll see the benefit costs. That bar keeps getting bigger and bigger over time. That is what we're up against year over year when building a budget. Moving on to the next slide, this talks specifically about facilities. So as I stated, we do have 8 school buildings and 4 admin or support buildings. We do have custodial staff, maintenance and ground staff. There's utilities costs in there, and then security staff as well. We have 1.2 million square feet. We have over 300 acres on our property that has to be mowed, that has to be plowed. In addition, we want to treat this facility like it's our own, right? You pay taxes, you pay your hard-earned dollars. We want to make sure we're upkeeping and that it actually looks presentable, especially for all the wonderful things that we have going on in our facilities. As Mr. Provenzano said, we have a concert going on right now at Minerva DeLand. There's always sports events going on. That comes at a cost, right? We don't want the bathrooms overflowing with toilet paper and paper towel. We want to take care of that. So this really looks at your facilities and your security costs. So if you look at 2020, that is that big bar in the center. That was the COVID year. So COVID shut down schools in about March of 2020, which is at the tail end of the 20 fiscal year. And why the expense went up that year is because everybody was buying that PPE, personal protective equipment. Everybody was going out buying hand sanitizer, paper towels, toilet paper, Clorox wipes, anything you can get your hands on, because I remember going to Tops that week and you couldn't find anything. So it was the same thing at schools, if not worse. And we were actually mandated to make sure that we were up and running to keep kids at a certain distance and to make sure that those kids had the hand sanitizer. So a lot of that was going in our facilities, going in our classrooms.
Not to mention our filters for our
filters, absolutely. A lot of costs happened that year that was also unknown. Nobody could have predicted the pandemic. If you could, please give me a call and give me some insight into the next year's budget. But unfortunately, that is something that cannot be predicted. So you'll see an uptick of expense there. In 2021, it was one of the lowest years. So although I stated costs are going up year over year, in 2021, we were not really operable as a school district. There was a lot of remote instruction that year through April of 2021. So 21 fiscal year runs through June of 21. So a lot of that time we weren't even in the building, so the expense dropped off in that year. And now you can see as we're getting more and more towards normal and the normacy of the world, you're seeing the costs increase. And again, that is strictly related to inflation and the increase mandates that are put on school districts that are most of the time, if not all the time, unfunded mandates.
and we're happy that we're back fully. The
100%.
hybrid model, the remote model was not optimal, even with those lower rates. So we're pleased that we're able to fully fund and keep our schools operationalized.
Absolutely. So with that, let's get into some technology. So you get 2 different bars here. You got the dark blue bar, which is your 1680 function code, and your light blue bar, which is your 2630 function code. So the 1680 is your non-instructional. Your 2630 is your instructional. So included in your 1680, let's start with the non-instructional towards the top there. That's going to be all your admin costs associated with your technology, the people that are behind the scenes really running your networks. In addition, it's your non-instructional equipment, your non-instructional softwares, and your admin costs related to BOCES. All that flows through the 1680 code. And then when you talk about your instructional technology, that's everything else. So that's all your teachers and your technicians that are actually working with the teachers, with the students on a daily basis. Those people are charged to those codes. There's software expenses, there's hardware expenses that the district gets aid on, and there's a lot of BOCES expenses that we run. We try to run expense through BOCES to maximize aid. A lot of that will be your Chromebook purchases for your students. So that all runs through your instructional technology. So you can see technology is kind of a hit and miss. It differentiates year over year, but we try to keep it as flat as possible because a lot of it also drives aid, especially when purchased through BOCES. Some notes there. We did get some federal stimulus funding that we used towards the instructional software. So that was able to take free federal dollars. We were able to buy things through BOCES to generate additional revenue on top of that. So big kudos to prior administration and our technology department for seeing that and taking advantage of that. We also have a technology reserve that we could utilize to fund purchases. So really we try to use that when things are outside of the budget norm. So if we have a lot of kids move in, as Dr. Wilson stated, maybe we need to buy a few more Chromebooks than anticipated. We can always pull from that reserve if we don't have the budget available. And again, spending through BOCES can vary between the categories. A lot of times BOCES will shift where they're expensing something. This year it might be instructional. Next year they might categorize it as non-instructional. It's not the district making those decisions. It's just how BOCES records it, and we have to just take that as it is and make changes accordingly. But it doesn't really change the budget. It's just moving money from one pocket to another. So with that, let's look at.
And going back to that slide, please.
Absolutely.
If you just, you said so much, and the thought about servers and web hosting and network security, data warehousing, these are cost centers that are fairly new in educational arena. And again, we're happy to provide these services, but they do come at a cost. And we see it in our budgeting process.
Absolutely. Digging into another section here is transportation. So transportation is any function code that begins with a 5. So you can see the 4 different sections of codes there. And it's a lot of it, again, is related to staffing. So if you look at that big brown bar, which is the biggest one, that includes the majority of that cost is your transportation salaries. And I do want to point out, if you look at that brown bar, it actually gets bigger as you get to 2024. Now, why is that? Well, that's because of the tremendous work done by the administration here, especially Mr. Lauf, with hiring. So over time, what you'll see is you'll see the pink bar kind of getting smaller. You'll see it pretty big in 2019 through 2022, getting smaller in 23, almost non-existent in 24. It's that darker pink bar. And that is your contract transportation, your 5540 code. So when we have to contract out for transportation, that means we cannot fill the run internally with our own driver. We need to hire an outside company to come in and drive our student. That's not ideal for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's not our employee that's greeting our student every day. These are the first people that our students see and the last people they see before they get home. We want to make sure that they're a Fairport employee. In addition, it's a lot more costly to run things through contract transportation because they know you need them. So they're going to hike up the price. So not only are we bringing more runs in-house, we're also decreasing our transportation costs as a whole because we are hiring our own staff, which is going to be cheaper than our contract transportation. Again, we provide transportation for special education placements, private and parochial schools that are not only inside our school, but outside our school. Homeless students, summer school, there's fuel, oil, parts, repairs. How many times do our buses need to go in for a repair just because of a normal maintenance? Think about your car. Now times that by 90 to 100 buses and that are being operated every day. In addition, we have that bus replacement plan that's on a 10-year cycle, and bus costs are increasing. And another thing we're looking at here at Fairport is we know it's only a matter of time before the temperature mandate that's set in the classrooms is going to happen on the buses. So it is something that our transportation director, along with myself and the administration staff, is looking to get air conditioning on buses because it is only a matter of time. In addition, we do run those summer school programs. So we are running schools, we are running buses 12 months out of the year. It would be nice to at least start with some of those buses being air conditioned and eventually getting to the entire fleet. So that is transportation. You will see overall the cost is increasing, but it would be a lot more if our contract transportation costs were as much as what they were in 2020 and 2021. And a lot of that is the salaries and the benefits that go ahead with transportation. Okay, looking at the non-instructional spending. So again, we usually categorize things in 2 different categories here, the non-instructional and the instructional. You'll see in the top right, the average for non-instructional spending is 50%. Now you'll think, well, that's a lot. We're a people business, but we're also an instructional business. Yes, that's true, but a lot of that stuff is needed to actually run your schools. So if you look at Fairport, we are that yellow bar there that's towards the left-hand side of the graph. We are actually at 49% of our spending is for non-instructional when the average is 50. So this just shows you that we're right in line. As Mr. Provenzano said at the beginning of this presentation, it's about transparency and also how do you match up to your local districts. So this is really looking at those districts that are in Monroe County. We compare ourselves more to the east side districts just because we're all on the same side of town. We all have similar demographics, similar state aids compared to the West Side districts. They might have a little bit more state aid than we do and able to differentiate their dollars in a different way. So we're right at 49%. We're almost the same as East Rochester. You can look there at Penfield is 46%, Pittsford is 49%. So we're right there, right in the middle.
Right, so another chance for us to ask some questions of you. Again, there will be a link for you to submit your questions to in the YouTube channel. As Mr. Nardone and Superintendent Provenzano shared with us some of the cost centers, including benefits, transportation, technology, facilities. Do any of those surprise you? Also, as we compared ourselves to neighboring districts, what's your impression of this comparison? And anything that you think, feel, or wonder about the non-instructional budget?
We would definitely be interested to hear.
Absolutely. Looking forward to your feedback. So we can't do any of the instruction without the non-instructional, so I appreciate that foundation. But let's focus again on the business that we are in, which is instructing our students. And so what's included in the Fairport program? We've touched on this a little bit, but this is the programming that our community has come to expect from us. We have a robust elective program. We have over 110 electives at Fairport High School on any given year. And there's a breakdown there. You'll see across all content areas, we have many, many electives that are available. We also have a very strong music and arts education program that many families come to Fairport for specifically. Again, we've talked about our universal pre-K. We have 108 students currently in our universal pre-K. We know that's a solid and strong start for any student, and we are proud of that programming. Just a couple other pieces that we have that I want to call out. Every summer we do some curriculum writing projects, making sure that our curriculum is current, up to date, and meeting the needs of our students. We offer lots of enrichment for our students in the elementary schools as well, making sure that they're prepared for all those electives that they get to take in high school. I've talked a little bit about that professional development that we make sure that all of our staff, including our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our clerical units, get to participate in. And then so many sports. We also offer lots of advanced placement courses. We have over 140 courses at the high school, including 20 APs, 7 courses that are through the Syracuse University. So we call those SUPA courses, if you've ever heard that. Some dual enrollment courses at MCC, SUNY Oswego, and GCC, all building a very strong foundation for our students for whatever they choose to do after high
Just
school.
to build upon the pieces of the curriculum development, I'm really proud of the efforts of what we've done to align our curriculum, develop standards-based curriculums, to get our educators collaborating so there's this cohesive K-12 horizontal and vertical alignment with our curriculum. That is directly linked to student success. And one thing I don't see on here, but I will tie it into the enrichment pieces, is our Spark Labs.
Absolutely.
And what the Spark Labs have done is really sparked curiosity, sparked our whole technology, instructional technology programming, and you're seeing that thread run up, all with starting at the elementary level with Spark. Again, community expectation and part of the instructional budget.
So now everything that Dr. Wilson and Mr. Provenzano talked about, let's put that in a graph form so we can see how everything matches up. So this is the instructional part of the budget. So again, the reason why we're here. If you look at it, you'll see the different bars over to the right, looking at the last 9 to 10 years there. And I want to call your attention, you can look at all these different codes, all the different 2000 codes, which is all the instructional part of the budget. If you have any questions, please drop me a link or send me an email, send Mr. Provenzano an email. We'll get back to you. We're calling out some of the big ones here. We're going to start with the pink bar. That is your teaching regular school. So what that means is that is all your teaching expenses and your student expenses for students that, for all students except for students with special needs. The students with special needs are categorized in the purple, and why they're categorized differently is because they'll generate public or private excess cost aid or some Medicaid that we can get back on those students. So we have to categorize them differently from the accounting standpoint. But if you look at that, that is the big part of our instructional budget, because that is why we're here, is to educate students. In addition, call your attention below the purple bar there is a brownish bar. That is your occupational education, which also includes your BOCES EMCC students, who are the students that go off to BOCES that can do cosmetology, automotive, all those great programs that BOCES can offer because of the strength in numbers with having those different schools be a part of them. In addition, a little bit below the brown bar is the lighter gray bar. That bar is your instructional technology, your 2630 code. So that is all that instructional technology lumped in so you can kind of see it. It is small compared to the entire instructional budget, but it is a big number, and that's what we showed on the previous slide. In addition, there's school library and audiovisual costs. There's guidance, health services, psychological services, social work students, social work services, all these services that our students have come to need and want for Fairport, and that is something that we want to continue offering. And in addition, you'll see the orange bar at the bottom there, and that is our interscholastics, which is all of our sports teams.
So I think this is a fascinating one. It does really do a nice job giving a nice visual reference, word picture, if you will, about the spending for our instructional components. And people are continually talking about, well, the cost of sports and athletics, and if you see how that's sort of mapped out there, it's there and it's an important factor. But if you look at that graph, it definitely puts it in perspective. And you would say the same thing for our co-curricular activities, which you get probably a lot of bang for our buck. That's our clubs after school. Our students will come to school only for those co-curricular activities. They're so important to the work that we do here, and our board recognizes that. And if you take a look at how that's categorized and how it speaks to you on that graph, it really puts in perspective of an important part of the program when we maximize the dollars, which you can also go through and talk about the mental health and how we support our students there. And again, proportionally speaking to, our regular programming, which is represented here.
Superintendent Provenzano, in the co-curricular activities, that also includes, just specifically to call out, our drama productions that everybody loves, the choir performance that we were just talking about at Minerva DeLand. So all of those other activities that students that make a well-rounded experience for students in our programming.
And then a similar slide is what we talked about before, just switching it now from the non-instructional to the instructional spending. Looking at that, our non-instructional was at 49%. So that means our instructional spending is at 51%, where again, the county average is at 50%. So we're proud to say that. Again, we are instructional business, so the majority of our expenses do go to that. And you can see how we match up with the county there.
And again, not a one-for-one, because you're looking at salaries and you're looking at longevity, the number of years of teaching staff in a district. So these could fluctuate based upon
Absolutely.
retirements that occur
100%.
every single year. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you.
All right, so as we've said, we are in the business of educating children. So how do we know what we're doing is working? And so that's the next portion of our presentation. So how are we measuring the impact or our return on investment? So we track our key performance indicators with, we measure our 4-year graduation rates, our performance on Regents exams and New York State testing, grades 3 through 8, our reduction in chronic absenteeism, all of our screening data. In diagnostics, we just wrapped up winter screening for our K through 8 students. Also our enrollment in and the performance in those courses in AP and dual credit classes, as well as monitoring the number of students that receive intervention services. You can find all of our key performance indicators and our current status at www.fairport.org/KPIs. And we update those periodically as they're updated. So some of those are lagging indicators, some of those are things that we can update throughout the school year. And feel free to go back to many of the workshops because we present on all of these topics throughout each year.
So I think you're underplaying this because this is your leadership on full display with your instructional directors and your lead teachers and coaches. We're really doing so well in this area. And I think this is a credit to the board because the board says just don't talk about how well you're doing, prove it. And these are our performance indicators. We have yet perfected them, but I'm really proud of the fact that we have them accessible. We report on them throughout the year. Like you said, occasionally I'll put it in my superintendent's report, pull out specific numbers, but that screening data is really powerful. And it really speaks to the investments are being spent well. And it's a credit to the curriculum alignment, the professional development that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we've really become a data informed district, and that really helps us to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students, including those who've moved in that we didn't know were coming, students with disabilities, students who require E&L services.
It's not always quantifiable, right? And I think, sometimes we don't really know the impact that we truly have many years after the fact. So these are right here in front of us, but also you also have an indicator of how well we do. Look at our parking lots, look at our celebrations of learning, look at our open houses, look at our celebrations of our community and Fairport excellence. Look at our pep rallies that are celebrated by so many. That's another qualitative way that we get a sense of how we're doing.
Yeah, and how many of our teachers have graduated from Fairport and choose to return back here, raise their families here, and work here. And so that's another indicator as well.
I do see us continuing to develop this in the future. I know that Dr. Wilson, again, trying to find a way, how do we reach out to those
Graduates. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's right. We really do want to look at our graduates and see, have we prepared you for whatever you've chosen in life, college, career, and what could we do differently and better? So there's always room to grow.
Stay tuned to a strategic plan update.
We're looking forward to the next iteration. So the last question for you tonight, again, you have a link that will be available in the YouTube site. But what we want to know from you is so we've talked to you about how we see our return on investment on the high quality academic indicators. But what else would you want to know that we have done what we say we're going to do, that we are educating our children, that we are fulfilling that promise? So what else would you want to know about our programming and the budget that supports that? And then as we look at our instructional spending as compared to our neighboring districts, again, what are your impressions of this comparison?
Great things to think about. What's next? I always say this, it's not a one-time event. It's a budget process. I'm really proud of the fact that we'll have over 13 interactions. There's a couple there that we didn't put on here that are more informal, but we give people the opportunity to engage with the budget. Under the hood is just one example. And as you see in this flow chart, next week we're gonna, because last week it was a snow emergency day and we had to cancel. So we'll be right back here talking about our revenues in our second session of Under the Hood. But the non-instructional budget, we'll be presenting that tomorrow. It's a draft form, and this will evolve over time. The conversations that we're having in February are not the conversations that we have in April and May. So please stay tuned as it's highlighted again on this flow chart. And of course, the annual budget is May 19th, and we'll be talking about that date and what the community will be asked to vote on for 26-27 school year. And as Dr. Wilson was saying throughout the presentation, we really appreciate your feedback. We want to hear from you. There's a QR code that takes you to this project and how we, this session and how we can continue to learn from you. Thank you very much for tuning in. We look forward to discussing revenues next week and the budget throughout budget season through May 19th. Thank you. Have a good evening.